Hi, I'm Eshaan reporting for Kids First, and today I have the opportunity to speak with Emmy and Peabody Award winner and Academy Award nominated director Sam Pollard about his latest film, The League. Mr. Pollard is known for Mr. Soul, Sammy Davis Jr., I've Gotta Be Me, and MLK FBI. Most recently, he directed the documentary The League, releasing July 7th from Magnolia Pictures. The league celebrates the journey of the successes and challenges of Negro League baseball. Welcome, Mr. Pollard, to the show.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. How you pronounce it? Sean?
Yes.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well. So, just to get started, you've been involved in lots of documentaries in your career. Was there a specific thing about this story that made you think, I have to be a part of this?
I'd be quite honest with you, Sean. I mean, I'm African American, and anytime someone approaches me about something where I can document the African American experience, I'm always happy to get on board. I mean, unless I don't think there's a way to make it into a good film. So when Byron Motley reached out to me many years ago about this story and about his dad who was a Negro League umpire, I was excited. I mean, first it was an African American story. Secondly, it was about baseball, which I grew up loving as a young man. And it was about people I knew a little bit about, Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. So all those ingredients made it something that I wanted to be attached to.
For sure. And I totally understand the importance of the story. And I think you mentioned tangentially, but you're not the only director of the movie, but you're also you're not only the director of the movie, but also the voice of the late Negro League umpire, author, and U.S. Marine Bob Motley, the last living Negro League umpire who passed away in 2017, right at the age of 94. So, how did you manage to balance the roles of actor and director?
Well, I wouldn't say I was an actor, man. I normally, when I'm doing these documentaries and there's some kind of voiceover, I normally do it myself, as in terms of the first pass. And the reaction to my voice by my executives was, wow, man, you got a great voice. Maybe you should be the voice of Bob Motley. Now, I was initially reluctant, because, to me, it was just a scratch track. But the more we talked about it, the more I kept listening to it. And then I knew I would go back into the studio and try to be more articulate. I thought, okay, this is something I could try. Between you and me, I mean, not between you and me, but everybody's going to hear this. I had always thought about maybe another career would to be a voiceover actor. So I guess this was my test.
Amazing. I mean, it's always great to have more than one, and this is an industry in which you can kind of move around and try things, which is amazing.
Sure.
And the league uses previously unearthed archival footage and kind of never before seen interviews. So can you share with us a favorite story that you uncovered in this whole process?
There were a couple that were surprising for me that I hadn't really known about. First of all, I knew who Rube Foster was tangentially, but to really dig into understanding this was a guy who was a phenomenal pitcher. He became a manager, he became an owner. And then in 1920, he had this fantastic idea. Let's start a Negro National League of bringing all these different Black-owned teams together, which was really set in motion the Negro Leagues. So that was really digging into that story. Another character who I didn't really know much about until we did this film was Effa Manley, who was co-owner of the Newark Eagles with her husband, Abe Manley. And this lady was phenomenal. She was ferocious. She's in the Hall of Fame. She was someone that there's a mystery surrounding her. Was she a Black woman? Was she a white woman? But she grew up in the Black community. And, she was always fighting for people's rights. I mean, her story about having Black women get hired at Bloomstein is fantastic. Her challenging Branch Rickey, who didn't want to pay the Negro owners, compensate the Negro owners for the players he was signing. She had a public outcry about that. So she was another fascinating character. And thirdly, I didn't know until we did the research that Paul Robeson had stepped into this difficult fray. And he went to the white owners and said, you guys should really consider, integrating the major leagues. And that's a new story. I mean, I know a lot about Paul Robeson. I thought I did, but I didn't know this little story about him. So, you always as a filmmaker, and of historical docs. You're sort of like an archaeologist where you're sort of digging into something and all of a sudden you have a new find. You say, oh my God. And that's one of the wonders and one of the joys of working on documentaries for me, historical docs.
Amazing. And as a fellow documentarian and also a journalist, I think we share this in common, that there's a little bit of that, you're on a little bit of an excavational dig every time that you come up with a new story idea. And it is really super special to find those hidden stories and those hidden wow moments, which is wonderful.
Always special.
And the movie brings together the importance of sports, economic prosperity, and also civil rights. Can you talk about how those themes are incorporated in the movie?
Well, here's the thing that's always fascinating. You look at a story. If I go back to when I was a teenager, and what did I learn as a teenager? I learned that in 1947, Jackie Robinson, this African-American man who was supposedly a very talented sports person who played football and basketball and baseball, integrated the major leagues. That's all I learned. I knew that he came from some group of guys called the Negro Leagues, but we didn't really go into detail. Now, here we are, we fast forward almost 50 years later, and now I learned not only about the fact that Jackie Robinson integrated the major leagues, but that the Negro League team that he came from, Kansas City, was a part of a group of teams all across the country. The Pittsburgh Crawfords, the Newark Eagles, the Homestead Grays, the Baltimore Elite Giants. And all these teams and these owners who own these teams were in Black communities that were segregated, where Black people had to survive on their own. They had to create their own forms of entertainment. They had to create their own forms of, buying clothes and buying food. They had to have their own funeral parlors. So it was within these self-contained segregated communities, businesses thrived. And that's the only way they were going to survive, because they couldn't go outside to the white world. So we learned that Negro Leagues was probably a part of the economic engine of these communities. People would go to games on the evening or on the weekends, day games, and they would spend their money, and that money would get circulated, by the owners back into the community. So they were part of the sort of economic sort of stability of these communities back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. But then you also learn that there was a downside to Jackie Robinson integrating the major leagues. What happened? All of a sudden, major league owners, white owners, saw that, okay, maybe there's more than just Jackie Robinson. So they really started to pilfer the Negro Leagues, and people like Larry Doby and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Ernie Banks and others who were in Negro League teams got pulled into the major leagues. And what happened? That caused the Negro League teams to suffer. And the same thing that was happening not only in baseball, was happening in other parts of the Black community, because the civil rights movement, where Dr. King and others were saying, we no longer want to be treated as second-class citizens, meant that integration was going to happen. And by the late 50s and the early 60s, integration started to happen in a way that these self-contained, segregated communities, Black communities, began to suffer. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. We wanted integration, but at what price?
I really appreciate that context, and that definitely, sets up a lot of what of the world the film takes place in, and also the world that I feel like we don't hear enough about, which I think it's going to be really, really rewarding for all the viewers of the league to see more about this story. So thank you so much, Mr. Pollard, for chatting with me today. And to all of our viewers, be sure to watch The League when it releases in theaters on July 7th, 2023. I'm Eshaan reporting for Kids First. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next interview or those of our awesome team members. And I'll see you later. Bye.
The pride, the passion, the courage in the face of adversity. That's the real story.